Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Monday, October 4th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, it'll take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. The book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. It's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships. And it's a tool that I can also use to turn any negative emotional experience into part of the infallible guidance system that each one of us has been gifted. You can also download the actual tool itself. It's a simple PDF file you can download, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. There's also a host of audio files that you can download of shows just like this one where people have called in and been either stepped through that worksheet process or given powerful testimonials about how that worksheet process has improved their lives. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness and get access to a completely free and private app. That app contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do that soon and often because that's something that usually sparks comments, questions, testimonials, etc. And if you have any of those, you can give us a call at 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I can announce you by your area code. We're also doing the Course in Miracles workbook lessons this year, and today is the 277th day of the year. Today's lesson 277 is simply titled, Let Me Not Bind Your Son, Your Offspring, with Laws That I Made. Your offspring is free, Father. Let me not imagine that I have bound them with your laws, with the laws that I made to rule the body. They are not subject to any laws that I made by which I try to make the body more secure. They are not changed by what is changeable. They are not slave to any laws of time. They are as you created them because they know no laws except the law of love. Let us not worship idols nor believe in any law of idolatry that would make to hide the freedom of the offspring of the Creator. They are not bound except by their beliefs, and yet what he is far beyond his faith in slavery or freedom. The offspring of the Creator are free because they are their Creator's offspring and cannot be bound unless the Creator's truth can lie, and the Creator can will that he deceive himself. So, we're also doing the Course in Miracles experiment lessons with Pam Grout. Her lesson 277 is titled, Pin the Tail on the Reality. She quotes D. Patrick Miller as saying, Learning is slowed less by lack of intelligence than by a reluctance to let go of bankrupt ideas and exhausted ways of seeing. Pam writes, when I was a kid, birthday parties featured three things: cake, presents, and pin the tail on the donkey. Maybe you've played it. A picture of a donkey is tacked to a wall, and one by one the participants are blindfolded, handed a paper tail, and spun around in circles. The object is less zero in on the donkey's backside and more laugh at your disoriented friends stumbling around the room. Worldview 1.0, the reality we've labeled as fact, is much like this childhood game. We are bound or blindfolded by make-believe laws. We actually believe the world is limited, that we're separate from other humans, and that our identity is a weird, needy flesh suit. At least children know when it's time to take off the blindfolds. The number of, quote, laws, close quotes, that we make up, that we've literally concocted out of thin air, would be laughable if we didn't take them so darn seriously. We've even made up science to prove this long list of limitations. The Course tells us there's only one thing that binds us, only one thing that limits our eternal, endless selves, and that is our belief in limits, our belief in arbitrary, quote, laws, close quotes. To get an idea of the number of, quote, made-up laws, close quotes, we've imposed upon ourselves, check out any Facebook quiz or women's magazine or library of how-to books. It's a fact. We're told that our bodies need X amount of daily protein, vitamin C, hugs, education, and on and on and on. The list of, quote, laws, close quotes, to ensure our body's safety is long indeed. But again, these laws only apply as long as we believe them. Today, I commit to forsaking all made-up laws. I claim instead my freedom and know the law, the only law to which I am bound, is the law of love. So, that is our Course in Miracles workbook lesson and our Pam Grout's Course in Miracles experiment commentary. And we have, as usual, about 50 minutes to honor your comments, questions, testimonials. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code. What's on your mind this Monday morning or afternoon, wherever you are, on this fragile blue marble that we are traveling through space on? How can we support you today? What would be beneficial to spend the next 50 minutes discussing? I have a number of things going on, including an interview later today with a gentleman who wrote the Emotion Code book, Dr. Nelson, and 2 other interviews later in the week. So that's a time to remind people that we are open to your suggestions about books we should read or people we should interview, either your favorite spiritual teacher or a podcast that you listen to that you find quite informative. And we will share those both with the JourneyStream.org project and or Mindshifters Radio as it is deemed appropriate. And Wednesday we're going to have the privilege to interview Richard Moss, Dr. Richard Moss, and a gentleman named Sean Perry, both on the same day. I should also remind us that we have Mindshifter support groups on Tuesday evening and Thursday evenings from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central, and those are available absolutely free through the MindshiftersAcademy.org website, and there's a separate login page for each day, separate Zoom password, etc. for each meeting. So how can we support you today? What's on your mind? What would be of use for you to have us discuss? We have variously over the past few weeks discussed books like Inside Out Healing. I believe I've talked in the past about Thich Nhat Hanh's book Reconciliation, Healing the Inner Child. And as I mention that, it dawns on me that I probably have quite a few books I should add to the list of books we've talked about on mindshiftersacademy.org. On that website, there's an actual page listing the books we've talked about here on Mindshifters Radio. And that sometimes gets away from me. And I probably have quite a few that I haven't uploaded yet. At the top of that list is the Empath Survival Guide by Judith Orloff, and In an Unspoken Voice, How the Body Releases Trauma and Restores Goodness by Peter Levine, Welcoming the Unwelcome by Pema Chodron, Healing Depression Without Medication by Dr. Jody Skillicorn, When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud, Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker, and the list goes on and on. Some of them have to do with topics very practical in nature, some of them very spiritual in nature, but I remember the favorite quote of mine from Guy Finley is, "There is nothing more practical than true spirituality." And I don't know, people might be interested, but there's they're redoing the Wisdom of Trauma series by with it includes Gabor Mate and his great experience and wisdom about dealing with trauma, and that's online these days. If you search for that, the Wisdom of Trauma, apparently they're doing a second version of that. It's a documentary type movie talking about the nature of trauma and how it impacts our brains and our relationships and what might be done to help people in a harm reduction model, which is basically what Gabor Mate was known for. And in his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, there's a lot in there about that model. The idea of meeting people where they are and making sure that even though you are not likely to be able to get them to buy into everything that you want them to buy into for a healthier life, there's a lot you can do to help them have a quality of life or a better quality of life, which puts you in a position to be able to help if and when they decide they want help and they want to choose to change. We've also been discussing little bits and pieces of the book by Alan Watts, the book which is about the taboo of knowing who you really are. And the idea is that you really are not just, as Pam Grout would call it variously, a meat sack having all of these rules and restrictions. You really are a spark of the divine, consciousness, And anything you can do to tap into that and this miracle of life expressing as you is going to be better for you and everyone around you. At one point in the book, Alan Watts says, finally, the game of life as Western man has been playing it for the last century. It needs less emphasis on practicality, results, progress, and aggression. This is why I'm discussing vision, and I'm keeping off the subject of justifying the vision in terms of practical applications and consequences. Whatever may be true for the Chinese and the Hindus, it is timely for us to recognize that the future is an ever-retreating mirage, and to switch our immense energy and technical skill to contemplation instead of action. However much we may now disagree with Aristotle's logic and his metaphors, he must still be respected for reminding us that the goal of action is always contemplation. Knowing and being rather than seeking and becoming. So this segment of that book puts me in mind of the Inside Out Healing and what we were talking about last week, where Richard Moss is trying to help a person work through his intense negative emotions about having metastatic cancer by simply learning to use the mandala of being. And the mandala of being, the quick review again, is there's a circle in the center with the word now in it, meaning present moment awareness. And then there's a larger circle around that with 4 arrows, one going straight up, one straight down, one straight left, one straight right. And they point to these various positions, you, me, past, and future. And one step at a time, Richard has people who he's working with bring an issue to the forefront that they would like to change, and then discuss it in a way that describes what's wrong and what they want to see improved. And then he has them step into the realization that they're either looking at it from a past perspective, or they're framing it in terms of a future perspective, or they're framing it in terms of blaming themselves for the problem and thinking they need to change, or focused on someone or something outside of them and blaming them for the problem and thinking they or it needs to change. And in this process, he has them not too long in any one of the 4 positions outside the center before he has them step back into the center and get calm and centered and focused in the strength that comes from present moment awareness. What Richard Moss calls focused openness, I forgot the word, but it's this spaciousness. So it's a focused nature, but we're only focusing on something with the same kind of energy that we would use to pick up a feather, to caress a feather, very gently focused on it and having a spaciousness to our awareness that lets us be aware of everything else at the same moment. And that's exactly what that segment from the book by Alan Watts is talking about. Rather than being so focused on what we do and accomplish and achieve, and it's using our present moment awareness to be able to be awake and aware in the moment and appreciate life expressing through us in that moment. And when we're in that now moment, in that now position in the mandala of being, we get to appreciate and experience things from a broader perspective. not so focused. He gives another example with a woman in Virginia. And he says, Virginia, I'm pleased to meet you. I have a note that describes your health challenge. Clearly, you've been having a very difficult time, and you understand that this work isn't going to address your physical diagnosis. And Virginia replies, there isn't one, and that's part of the problem. All the doctors I've seen have their own ideas, but even after countless tests, no one's has really defined the problem or recommended a treatment that's been helpful. And Richard says, okay, thank you. I appreciate how frustrating it must be to have seen so many doctors and have all of these tests that lead to no conclusion. What I can help you become more aware of is what you may be doing to make things more difficult through the stories that you're telling yourself about your condition. Is that clear? Virginia says, yes. Yes, I've wanted to meet you because I've followed your work for many years, and I believe that you're a true physician. So many doctors act as though, and then Richard cuts her off and says, hold on, excuse me for stopping you, but I'm sure we will get to your beliefs about doctors as we do the mandala work. I guess I will take your remark about me being a true physician as an indication that you have come with a lot of expectations. Positive ones, I hope. I hope you won't find yourself disappointed. I always say that when someone has such high regard. It's only downhill from there. Virginia laughs. So, as you've heard me say, the first key to the mandala to support emotional well-being is to clearly define the issue you want to inquire about. So, can you tell me what that issue is? Virginia replies, I gave spiritual counseling for many years, which was my work and service, and of course I was deep into my own mystical journey. I was an activist locally and globally, but gradually I became almost immobilized by mercury poisoning due to dental fillings. I took care of that more than 10 years ago, but my health has continued to deteriorate. I experience frequent brain fog. I have no physical or mental energy, nor do I have the clarity to write like I once did. All of my systems have been compromised. I've held on to the faith that there's a deeper meaning to this. She calls it an initiation by fire, but I've been unable to find anyone in the healthcare field who could help me regain some energy for clarity and creative work. All right, thank you. That's a clear summary. I'm unable to travel for the shortest trips like this one, only if I have help. So it feels like I'm on a roller coaster. All right. Thank you. That's a clear summary of what you've been living and some very real challenges you face. So now, how would you encapsulate what the issue is we'll be working on? Virginia says, the real issue is that I'm not well. I can't do my work. What's the meaning of my life if I can't do creative work and be of service to others? Richard says, okay, now it's becoming clearer. You're not well. That is a fact. Next is that you can't do your work. What belief means is that you are referring to what you did in the past. What that belief means is that you're referring to the work you did in the past and you find yourself no longer able to do. So that's only for this moment. I'll treat that as a fact. You can't do your work, at least not your previous work. Of course, perhaps your work has changed to something new and you can't see what that might be yet because you're looking to the past. But if we frame the last thing you said not as a question but as a statement, maybe that would succinctly define the issue. So here's the statement he's suggesting. Quote, my life has no meaning if I can't do the creative work and be of service to others. Close quotes. So then Virginia counters with, well, my life has meaning, everyone's life has meaning, not being well is the problem. And Virginia is now clearly very uncomfortable. Richard replies, I'm not saying that your life has no meaning, of course it does. I simply reframed what you said as a statement instead of a question. So when they finally get to it, now they've got a specific statement of what she wants to change. And as he works with her about her beliefs around that statement, he has her move back and forth from the position of now, which is strength and openness and connection to source and all of these other wonderful words that people might use. And then he has her step into the various positions of past and future, other and self, to unravel the beliefs and the thoughts that she's buying into, which are literally imprisoning her. And that's exactly what we do with the reality management worksheet. I experience an emotion that I don't like, or I experience a recurring negative thought, and I'm not comfortable with it. And that motivates me to pick up a reality management worksheet. Once I pick up the worksheet, I'm basically doing a slightly different procedure to get at exactly what Richard Moss does in his work. I'm laying out the thoughts I use to create the emotions, the interpretation that I've put on the life event unfolding in front of me, and the dynamic that my mind is showing me and telling me this has to happen in order for you to have peace or safety or calm or joy or relief from the pain. Once I map that out, and I realize, very much like what the Course in Miracles lesson says today, I'm making that up. That's one of the keys in this work, is I cancel everything my mind is telling me about what is causing my pain, my fear, and my sadness. I cancel everything my mind is telling me about how things have to happen and change in a specific way in order for me to be okay. And I ask to be shown to get access to a higher level of mind, of integration, of wisdom, of intuition, call it what you will, so that I can see my situation differently. And when I place a different interpretation on my life situation, I literally change my experience of that life situation. And again and again and again, I can do this with the Reality Management Worksheet, or Ho'oponopono, or Byron Katie's work, or the Mandala of Being work, or Diedrich Wolfsack's 6 Steps to Forgiveness. All of it is about understanding essentially what the Course in Miracles lesson for today has told us, that we are literally creating these arbitrary laws and placing them on ourselves and others as a way to justify judging ourselves or others, and as a way of identifying with the constriction, the smallness, the limitations, the obstacles to our being truly ourselves. So, again, as you explore these various spiritual teachings, what I have found most useful is oddly enough, it's pretty much the opposite of what I encounter with most people. Most people are busy trying to look at the differences between the spiritual teaching they like the best and anybody else's spiritual teaching. And what I recommend, what's given me the most benefit over the years, is to look for the similarities. Because in anything that actually works, I'm probably going to find the exact same core dynamic operating. We have this life, we have these rules, dynamics, principles, laws, capital L laws, whatever you want to call them, that help us navigate through the way the world works. And the more I can see the way it actually works and align myself with that flow of life and energies and dynamics, the more peaceful my life gets, the better results I get out of life, and the less energy that I spend fighting against what is. So, again, every time I pick up a book these days and I compare the notes of these really good spiritual principles, I get far more benefit when I focus on the similarities than I do the differences. So 563-999-3581. Call that number, press 1. Let's have a conversation. What's on your mind? Ellen?
Hi, Dr. Tim. Hey, I was wondering, so have you read that entire book yet, Inside Out Healing?
Hold on just a minute. The volume on yours is too low. Did you ask, have I finished the book yet?
Yes.
No, I have not yet finished that book. I've been dabbling in that one and the Mandala of Being and several other books, trying to get ready for a variety of interviews I'm doing.
Yeah, and I know you said you are going to do an interview with him on Wednesday, so I thought I would just ask you about this because I think there's another piece, and there's actually another mandala later on in the book that he presents that is for use in dealing with what he calls the abysmal feelings, the feelings that most of us are really afraid of facing. And prior to that, he talks about like the difference, how he defines emotions versus feeling, and that he describes the difference. I'm not, this is just my own version of it. It's been a while since I read it, but what I took away from it was that feelings are pre-verbal. They have nothing. True feelings are pre-verbal. There's a great intelligence in them, as opposed to emotions, which he describes as they're feelings that get co-opted by the ego. And
wrapped
thought,
up in thought.
Ego,
exactly.
Right.
Put that word thought in there, right?
Yeah, because the ego is going to be terrified of anything it cannot comprehend or understand. So it's going to take feelings and try and, come up with the story about what this is and define it and all that stuff, and all the thoughts. And so he talks about how important it is to be able to stay with the feeling and not allow the ego to co-opt the feelings. And he has a mandala in there with that, pertaining to that. And I just wanted to bring that up because I would love for you to get maybe, ask him some questions about that piece of it, as well as the mandala of being that you're already familiar with.
Well, and it's really, the thing that you're bringing up is a really powerful point in his work. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago that somebody started raising the question for Dr. Rice, can we clarify the difference between feeling and emotion? Because it was confusing for some people on the worksheet. And he literally changed a word or two in the worksheet to try and make sure it's not just feeling, it's the word, the emotion, right?
Right.
And so what we were talking about as we discussed that, people would ask me, and I would say, well, my distinction between the word feeling and emotion is feeling is an energy. So it can be a sensation like warm or cold. It can be tight or tense. It can be scratchy, a sensation, a physical sensation or an energetic sensation. And an emotion is thoughts I have about life and those sensations. And the more I think, pour mind energy into a certain pattern of thought, the more it's going to generate some of those physical sensations that I learn to associate with that pattern of thought.
Exactly.
And what Richard Moss is talking about is that there's great wisdom in the feeling. He's, as I read it, he was tying it more into gut intuition, guidance, etc. So, and that's stuff that happens before we wrap it with thought. Right? You said the phrase pre-verbal, right? This is something that we experience energetically, physically, intuitively. Sometimes this whole body shiver or sensation, sometimes a whole picture knowing of what to do next, but there aren't even any words for it, and then action just flows.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, I think that's a good way to describe it, is to say you can't describe it. It's pre-verbal. It really can't be thought about, and it's very difficult to describe because now you're putting words to something that's pre-verbal. You can only experience it. You can only feel it. You can't really think about it because now you've changed now from body. Because I think of it as you feel in the body, and so now you've gone from body to mind as soon as you start to talk about it. So he has another mandala in there where he's saying, when you're in that now moment and a feeling like that comes up, he's got like stop signs that go all around that now circle, that inner circle. Don't go out to the stories because that's the ego trying to co-opt the feeling and turn it into an emotion. And he says that's just,
that's what he says when the now is abysmal, right?
Yes.
He says when you're creating this everything negative about the present moment. He says, in the case of untamed feelings, if you don't heed the signs that tell you do not enter, and instead allow your ego to carry you into the me or the you or the past or the future, these stories will end up placing you in a real mind bender of emotional misery.
Yeah, and I think we're all very familiar with that.
Right, but he talks about the dark feelings, right? He says that abysmal feelings are part of the ingenious way in which our souls help us to continue to evolve. Therefore, experiencing them is ultimately intrinsic to deep healing. So he's advocating for being willing to feel even the dark feelings, the abysmal feelings, and not get stuck in them, not buying into the stories that our ego will almost instantaneously churn up to validate or identify with those abysmal feelings.
Exactly.
He says, once you let the ego hijack you, it will instantly lead your attention away from the feeling and into the stories. And these stories, like a deluge, will drown you in a frantic storm of emotionality. He says, make no mistake, the emotional reality created by your ego, when it tries to encompass an abysmal feeling, is far more miserable and inevitably more destructive to you than the actual feeling, if you can just stay present with it. And the thing that flooded into my mind is the idea of the loss of a parent or a child, right? The loss of a loved one. In that moment, we are probably going to have an intensity of feeling without the words, without the labels, without calling it grief, without calling it helplessness or hopelessness, just the flood of energy and the feeling that is so intense that it brings to mind his word abysmal. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, if I let my ego jump in and start labeling it, I can be swept away in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Not giving these feelings to the ego means staying present, focused on this spacious and focused spaciousness, ready and relaxed. It also means that you understand the ego's game. That is, your ego cannot bear these feelings, and it will instantly start telling you stories about yourself, itself, the situation, etc. The key here is understanding that these energies, it's a lot like what Michael Singer talks about in his work. These energies are just the flow of life, and we're intended to experience them as they flow through us, not judge them, not grab them, not push them away, just experience them. You know, he talks about people, Michael Singer talks about how people go to the best Shakespeare play ever, one of the tragedies, Romeo and Juliet. And they're there, and they're so connected. The actors and actresses are just so in sync. They've gotten in the flow. And you sit there, and you ache for them, and you cry, and you feel this intense emotion, and you say, oh, my gosh, I've got to come see this again. I've got to bring my neighbors to this. This was fabulous. Because you're experiencing this intense emotion of the tension, the sadness, the loss, the deep love, etc. And it's like your heart is bursting with the intensity of these emotions. And your thought is, I want to do this again. I want to bring my friends. But when you're in your very own life and you experience those emotions, you don't label it good, and you don't say, oh, I wish everybody could feel this. And the only reason you don't is because of the stories, as Richard Moss would say, because of the stories you're telling yourself about it that's pulling you out of the now experience. You know, Michael Singer says, man, I never imagined my heart could experience an emotion this powerful. This is amazing. Without giving it a label of bad or good or, something I can't feel, I can't withstand. It's just there. It's just, wow, what a ride. Wow, what a flow of energy. Wow, what a musical extravaganza this is. My heart is playing all of these notes I've never experienced before. And that's Michael Singer's way of getting at the very same thing that Richard Moss is talking about here. Staying in the now moment and refusing to let the ego hijack me, as Richard Moss says. Because the ego will instantly want to lead my attention away and validate, justify, label, blame. But he wants to be clear here that it's not my thinking that creates the dark feelings. These intense, abysmal feelings are a natural consequence of being alive. It's energy flow. So it's not a question of unpacking what I'm telling myself, but instead stopping myself from creating stories that lead me away from the feelings and lead me into the emotions, which have all these stories wrapped around them in the blame game.
So do you think that if we did not allow ourselves, as children to feel these feelings, because I know from my own self, I thought it was unbearable. Like I really thought that I would die, and so if we have trapped or suppressed these feelings, do we then create situations later in life that will bring
resonate
up these things?
Yeah.
Well,
that's some people have that as a theory, and I don't know if that's how it actually works, but some people have that theory that as long, Michael Rice would tell you, if you're holding it in your system, then it's the life's purpose, life's job is to come along, in Michael Rice's words, and kick you in the limitations, right? If it's in you and it is less than loving, in Michael Rice's words, then life wants you to be directly connected to the loving, expansive, true nature of your being. So if you're holding something that blocks you from that, life is going to come along and resonate it.
Yeah.
So how does it happen that you're a child and you come to the conclusion this is too intense? Well, because often you're not even aware of the context, the bloodline energies, et cetera, the traumas, the fears, the inadequacies that are resonating in your system. And if you don't have the nurturance and support from a loving adult structure around you, you do your best. Right? The ego does come in and say, oh, I can't handle this, and oh, this is going to be the end of me, et cetera. And if there's no adult there saying, trust me, it's going to be okay, let's just have a nice long hug and cry this out and feel it. And if you don't have that, then you make do with your best guess based on your intelligence and your ego strengths as a person, all these factors that are just like soup that get mixed together that we don't get to choose. But I've worked with people, and I've had parents who've been really good parents and worked with their kids and used the stuff that we can support them with in therapy to really be there and teach and help the child contain their emotions, help them express them, help them stay in touch with them, to basically do what Richard Moss outlines in his mandala of being. Keep coming back to the present moment, take a breath, feel it, allow it to be there, cry if we need to cry, give it some words if you need to, and then the parent nurturing the child from the outside saying, you're a good kid, you have two parents that love you very much, it's going to work out, I know it doesn't seem like it, but we'll get through this together, I don't know how it's going to work, but I know we'll get through it together. When that kind of external support is there, children tend not to shut things off, block them, lock them down, and they tend to work through them better. And that's how children end up having what a lot of people would call a healthier ego, right? A healthier personality,
right?
A stronger felt sense that they will be able to handle whatever life brings them.
So let me ask you this: Can you use something that, like, I'm in a place where I know I need to, just allow these feelings, allow myself to feel them. And so can I use, like, a situation that is happening or has happened to kind of take myself there and then just try and drop whatever the story is? Or, I don't know.
Well, help me understand what you mean. I'm not quite grasping the question yet. Can you use what? A current life situation?
Yeah, that's very distressing. To help myself, allow the feelings. Because I just keep coming to it seems like a roadblock where I really am so willing to to face and allow these feelings in, and yet they don't seem to really come. I don't know exactly what's happening. If maybe I'm not able to stay fully in the now, or I'm not sure what it is.
Well, my guess would be that it's about a need to do practice, right? That there's a level of, we've talked about this a number of times, where I think I'm willing at a level that I'm not, and I don't even understand, because I don't really understand what willingness would look like or feel like when I first start these things.
Right.
So I need to practice staying with whatever comes up when I say I'm willing and I put myself in a situation that I think should be moving me forward and I feel stuck. Then I work with the stuck feeling, and I just keep doing whatever process or procedure, use the tools, and have the confidence that over time I will develop a different level of willingness, a level of willingness that in the beginning I can't even comprehend. I haven't been there before.
Yeah.
And I just got the thought of, if somebody tries to you've never seen anything like it, right? You were born like under the ocean somewhere, and you've never had an experience above ground, and somebody tries to describe to you the Grand Canyon. Well, there's a certain level of picture you'll be able to create in your mind, but it's nothing like what the actual experience is.
Right.
And that's like what happens with willingness. We talk about, we have people say we even see other people demonstrate willingness, but unless we have moved into that within ourselves, we can't comprehend what that's going to feel like in us and what we're going to have to face within ourselves that we've been hiding from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've mentioned this before. I've been to the intensive center, Dr. Rice's intensive center before, and literally heard people screaming, "But I am willing." Damn it. As they stay stuck in their stuckness. And, and the answer from anybody who's, working with them that is honest is that, okay, we understand that, and with practice or with patience over time, that person will discover more about what actual willingness means.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, it's got to be willingness to just give up your life. I mean, or what you think is your life.
Well, absolutely that. Absolutely what you think. Right? I mean, like, just take Byron Katie's work. I only suffer when I believe my negative thoughts. Mm-hmm. When I believe what I think. I've got to be willing to give up what I think. What I think my life is, who I think I am, what I think I should do and be, because I'm already doing it and it's leading to my misery. Right? Not because it's inherently bad or wrong, but because the way it's lining up within me isn't productive. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
This is moving away from judging myself as being bad or wrong, and just I want to move into the practicality of this. Listen, what I'm doing right now isn't working, so perhaps I should feel free to try something else. I don't need to label what I was doing as bad or wrong or evil or... I just need to be willing to try again.
Yeah. So, can you use like a story to get you to the? Probably not. I mean, the feelings that need to be felt, they're just going to arise spontaneously, correct? I mean, or is there a way that you can try and call them in?
Well, I don't know. I think you have something in your mind that I'm not grasping yet. What is it you're referring to? Can you give me an example?
Well, let's say the loss of someone, something that you really love.
I think you just did it. Breathe. I think you just answered your question. Just breathe. And try to take a nice, full, deep breath. Hold it for 2 or 3 counts at the top, and then slow the exhale down. So your exhale is far longer than your inhale. You can keep crying if you need to, but just do that breathing where you train the body to understand this isn't life and death. You don't need to go to fight or flight here. Nice deep breath, hold it for a couple counts, and then release the exhale very slowly.
I find that when I concentrate on the breathing, I'm like shutting out the feeling.
That's okay for now, right? Because we don't want you so overloaded that you can't do the next process. And the next process is, if you're going to do the Richard Moss process, then you take a look at, okay, what thought am I using about this loss to generate such negative emotion? Is it a thought about the future or the past, about another or about myself? And then you can get clear about what you're making this loss mean. And then you can step into that process.
Well, I think the process I'm wanting to step into is the one where you don't you don't go into the stories.
Right.
You don't leave the now.
Exactly. Find out what story that you're in, and then move back to the now, away from the story.
Story is clear to me.
And then if you sit in that now and you let that abysmal negative feeling be there, and keep your breath moving, then you're doing this work that he outlines in the second mandala. And if you've got, support, like you could, get on this show or with a friend, then you stay there and you keep the breath moving and you feel all of that emotion without judging it and without moving into the story. And you keep, when the stories want to come up, you hit the stop sign and you bring yourself right back to the tears or the intense feeling energy.
Right. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to get off now so I can do this.
All right. Blessings. Thank you for the call.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Good processing with Ellen.
Thank you. Have a great show.
Thanks.